What is up, though, Lions fans? The Motor City Cats back at it. Came to give you stats, not static. And whatever you do, make sure you keep your Lions news pragmatic. Now, we're going to jump into the NFC North report. But before I do that, I just want to ask Paul Pierce. If you saw my last video, I was talking about not getting any respect from the national media and things of this nature. I just want to ask Paul Pierce, do you see chinks in Philadelphia's armor because they struggled with a 3-win team, whereas you saw chinks in the Detroit Lions armor because they struggled with a 9-win team? So I just want you to keep the same energy. When you go on speak, I just want you to keep the same energy. Monday, please have the same energy, because the Philadelphia Eagles were a Xavier Leggett drop from losing to a 3-win team, making them a 4-win team at home in Philly. Okay, that's it. So back to our regularly scheduled programming. We're talking about the NFC North. The NFC North, here's the thing that I've learned in life. Emotional intelligence is very, very important. Some would say, well, I guess in some situations it's obviously more important than it is book smarts or whatever, so emotional intelligence goes into street smarts. It goes into all types of things. Just understanding how to deal with situations. Byron Murphy, whenever you stick, and if you guys don't know, Byron Murphy plays for the Minnesota Vikings. Whenever you stick a microphone in that man's face and you ask him about the Detroit Lions, he's like, oh, man, y'all need to stop talking about the Detroit Lions, man. We tired of all the Detroit Lions hype. Y'all just need to be talking about us. Well, Byron, the Detroit Lions are 12-1. They're at the top of the division and the conference. The Minnesota Vikings are 11-2, and they are at the top of neither. The Minnesota Vikings had an opportunity in Minnesota earlier in the year when they were 5-0 to beat the Detroit Lions and go 6-0. Well, they jumped out on all over the Lions 10-0 lead, and then they still lost the game. Yes, you are literally saying, hey, look at us. We're the team that lost to Detroit, but we want to be talked about more than the Detroit Lions. I don't see that's the thing, bro. In our division, we have one team that is emotionally intelligent, and that is the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions don't talk. They talk after the job is done. When you ask a Detroit Lions player, they'll give the respect to the opponents, and they'll give the politically correct answer. They're not giving any bulletin board material. None of that. But our division foes, man. I mean, you have Xavier McKinney, who finally was silenced and humbled after he had 2 bites at the apple and couldn't get anything done and really didn't have any effect or impact on either one of the games. Then you got Byron Murphy talking, but you guys have lost to us already. The best that you can do is split. Come in our house and beat us just as we went in your house and beat you. That's the best that you can do, Byron. That's it. And maybe you can play spoiler for us getting the number 1 seed. Maybe. But Byron, where you guys are sitting right now, you are a wild card team. You are 11-2 and not at the top of the division because the Detroit Lions are. The Detroit Lions have beaten you, and they are 12-1. You have 2 losses on your record. One of them is to the Detroit Lions. It's simple. Very simple. But I digress. The Minnesota Vikings were visited today by Kirk Cousins. As you know, Kirk Cousins, homecoming. He 6 years as a Minnesota Vikings quarterback. The reason they left is because the Minnesota Vikings probably saw this version of Kirk Cousins coming, and they didn't want to give him the length of time that he wanted on the contract. The Atlanta Falcons, on the other hand, gave him more years because they were in quarterback purgatory. I mean, last year they had Desmond Ridder, and I don't know how many games you guys watched, but Desmond Ridder did enter the game because Aidan O'Connell, I think it's broken, fracture, something in his lower leg. High probability that Desmond Ridder is going to be the quarterback for the last 4 games of the season for the Las Vegas Raiders, clearing the way for them to draft Shedeur Sanders. But anyway, that was the guy that was the starter for the Atlanta Falcons last season. So they decided, hey, Kirk Cousins is available. Yes, he is just coming off of a torn Achilles, but he's available, and he wants to sign with us, and we don't have any answers, so let's go ahead and get that done. Now, no one knew that they were going to, including Kirk Cousins, going to draft Michael Penix, but they did that, and it might be time to put Michael Penix in because Kirk Cousins threw another 3 interceptions today. One of them was overturned on replay, but 2 of them counted. Okay, so Kirk Cousins in his last 4 games has 8 picks. That's not good. And we thought maybe it would turn around today because he's going in, playing his old team, revenge game, whatever chip you wanted to put on your shoulder, be effective, be the Kirk Cousins of old, turn the clock back, and it just wasn't available. I saw some very interesting stats. Shout out bootleg football. Very interesting stats about the reason that their offense is stalling out. It's because all the film that they're seeing, that people are seeing, is Kirk Cousins being hampered by this Achilles injury, being in the pistol 70-something% of the time. And whenever they're in the pistol, when they hand off the ball, they hand it off to the right side, and usually people hand it off to the left side, and so on and so forth. A lot of different things going on, but very predictable offense. When they're in the shotgun, they pass 90% of the time. So having an offense like that, which is very predictable, and they've put nothing on tape but predictability, you should have known that Brian Flores was going to go ahead and dial up the pressure and dial up the coverage and get Kirk Cousins out of there, which is what they did. 42-21 was the Minnesota Vikings over the Atlanta Falcons. So as I said earlier, the Minnesota Vikings are 11-2, and they stay on the heels of the Detroit Lions at 12-1. Obviously, we're going to be watching closely down the stretch. We've got 4 more games left. We'll see what happens in those games. But as I said, just a word of advice, Vikings. Stop talking about the Detroit Lions. Do what you got to do, because we're living in your head rent-free already. All right, let's move on to the Chicago Bears. To sum this game up, the Chicago Bears versus the San Francisco 49ers. To sum this game up, at the end of the first half, the total yards was 319 San Francisco 49ers, 4 Chicago Bears. They outgained them 319-4. Caleb Williams was sacked in this game 7 times. By the half, he had minus 30 yards in sack yardage, which is crazy. The offense didn't look good. I thought with the Thomas Brown promotion, okay, now it's a double promotion in the last, 3-4 weeks, right? Shane Waldron is fired. He was the passing game coordinator. He was promoted to offensive coordinator. Matt Eberflus is fired after Thanksgiving. Thomas Brown is promoted to head coach. New coach bump only worked once, and it only worked against the Packers, and it didn't work as far as winning the game, but they were so much more competitive than they had been the last 4 games leading up to the firing of Shane Waldron. As we know, they lost by a blocked field. Was it a field goal? Yeah, blocked field goal with no time remaining. They still don't have answers for offense in the first half. It's hard to live that way in the NFL. Even in college, it's hard to live that way. You can't be competitive if you're only going to play one half of football. So this is what's happening with the Chicago Bears right now. They are playing one half of football. It's like they're taking the first half to try to figure out what they can do to be effective offensively, and they're leaning heavily on their defense. This game was over by the half, which it should have been over by the half when we played them on Thanksgiving, but, we had to gut it out, and it's also a divisional game. And you know my rule. In the division, we know you, we hate you, we want to ruin your season. And that is all that happens in divisional games. But the Chicago Bears are not a good football team right now. You can't really expect a team to go through so much turmoil and turnover, and then they've got a rookie quarterback, and it's a mess in Chicago right now. So if you haven't seen, you have to go find it on Twitter. But if you haven't seen what Ben Johnson is looking for in a situation where he'd be looking to maybe go as a head coach, Chicago ain't it, right? The highlight of what he is looking for is he is looking for the organization to tell him what was wrong, admit to being wrong, admit to doing things the wrong way, and then giving him a plan on how they will fix it going forward. That's not the Chicago Bears. Very, very surprised if Ben Johnson becomes the head coach of the Chicago Bears. I don't care if they have a quarterback in place or not. But yes, as I said, the Chicago Bears lost this game 38-13, and it wasn't even that close. It wasn't even that close. They got boat raced out of that building. They didn't show up. Obviously, just as the Bears always do, they tried a spirited rally in the second half and towards the end of the game, but it just wasn't happening for them. All right. And as we know, NFC North report wouldn't be complete until we talked about the Lions and the Packers. We talked about it ad nauseum. We went over all the ups and downs, the nooks and crannies, right? The nitty and the gritty. The Detroit Lions, 34. Green Bay Packers, 31. Detroit Lions moved to 12-1. Green Bay Packers moved to 9-4. Third place in the division. Way, way, way out ahead of the fourth place Chicago Bears. So the Detroit Lions are number 1 in the NFC North. The Minnesota Vikings are number 2. The Green Bay Packers are number 3. Chicago Bears are number 4. Look, we just saw and I'm not going to give too much away here, because obviously I'm going to talk about this throughout the week. We just saw the Buffalo Bills get punched in the mouth. We just saw a lot of their weaknesses be our strengths, especially offensively. Our strengths offensively against their weaknesses defensively. A lot of stuff was being exploited. They lost to a team who was desperate. Obviously, the Rams are in a desperate situation. They were 6-6 going into this game. They are now 7-6. But the Buffalo Bills, I don't think, are the giant and the behemoth that everyone thought that they were. Josh Allen, phenomenal. Monster, bro. First quarterback ever to throw for 3 touchdowns and rush for 3 touchdowns in the same game. But ever in the history of everdom. Ever. But guess what? They still took that L. Right? My fear of the Buffalo Bills was Josh Allen going off. I mean, he went off historically and they still lost. So, again, that's an NFL football team. They may have been looking ahead to the Detroit Lions. Who knows? They may have fallen for the trap because they were favored in that game. They may have fallen for the trap. Now, okay, you fell for the trap. What's your mindset going to be when you come to the opponent that you were looking ahead to? Look, when we weren't very good, and it was a supposedly better Buffalo Bills team, right? When we weren't very good, we still took them down to the wire. So they came into Detroit. They're coming into Detroit again. We'll see what happens, but I'm not going to give too much away for that. That is going to be it for the NFC North report. Kings of the North signing off. You know what it is. The Motor City Cats back at it. Came to give you stats. None of that static. Whatever you do, I can't tell you what to do. I mean, but if you want to take my advice, make sure you keep your Lions news pragmatic, and we are out. Peace. If you came for all the stats and none of the static, if you're trying to keep your Lions news pragmatic, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you can get notified when the Motor City Cats are back at it. And plus, you know you can't get enough of the victory buffs.